The summary response assignment is for real. It's a tricky assignment because what you're showing is that you have all the skills that are necessary for academic writing, all the skills that you're going to need to complete the course. But that means, of course, clarity of writing. So all the grammar work should be there, the precision of the sentence, the flow, the structure. So you're creating a small but tight piece of writing that shows that you have everything in hand. And that includes, of course, attribution and citation, works cited. Can you properly put together multiple sources and ideas? It's an incredibly sophisticated paper that will confirm that you have the skills that you should have at the end of this one and set you up to really succeed in the exploratory synthesis, which builds upon all the skills here. In some ways, if you can do the summary response and you have some success with it, you should feel very comfortable about going into the exploratory synthesis. In many ways, the exploratory synthesis could be even simpler than the summary response. So let's take a few minutes to go ahead and take a look at the assignment sheet. And as we go through the assignment sheet and the sample, pay very close attention. This is an assignment that if you don't give yourself enough time, then you could possibly really mess up. And it is a very precise assignment. So let's spend a few minutes with it. Well, the summary response is a tricky paper, and you'll notice it's not that long, really. 400 to 700 words. That puts you about a page and a half, 2 pages on the max side. But do note that it requires a works cited. And then, let's go and take a look at this assignment more closely. The summary response note here builds on your summary. And what that means is you're going to begin with that same key text that you used in your summary. However, what it does is a little bit differently is right here it notes, gives you the opportunity to show that you understand source material and to critically respond to the ideas in your key text. Note that that kind of objective distancing that you had to do in the summary is not required in this one. In fact, it won't work. So what you're looking here is in the summary response, think of readers that may not have read the original texts. That does mean, so some of the summaries that you did in that summary, like maybe the medium summary or even better, the small summary, where you could sum up an article in one sentence or a couple sentences, that sort of material does need to show itself in the summary response as you introduce your text. Now, note a couple things. You are working with 2 texts in this. One is your key text. One text is your key text. The other must meet the same requirements. And those are the academic search complete, etc. One author, at least one author, PDF. And then if you're local, you do have some more options, a print-based book or article found in the library. Note that any of the text taken from the Canvas key text pages will meet these requirements. So the key text plus one other source. You do have the option of making your own critical evaluations of 1 or 2 ideas from the key text, but the primary way to respond is through the use of a second source, an article other than your key text. And so let's go ahead and break this down more specifically. You'll note here under organization, in the first sentence or 2, much as you did in your summary, introduce the author of the key text, title of the source, and 1 or 2 ideas from the text that you intend to consider. Now, these can be any ideas that are interesting to you and fit into a conversation with another source, right? So even though a second text may not be talking about exactly the same things that your key text is, are there some places where an idea or a principle from your key text have something to do with the second text that you select? Note then, your opening should finish with a clear sense of 1 or 2 issues or questions that will be responded to, and then some point after that opening, you're going to introduce your second text. Now, as you introduce that second text, it's not really that important that you introduce the article of the text, but you should at some level introduce the authority. And as always, make sure that this is MLA formatted with a works cited page at the end. Let's look at the grading criteria before we look at a sample. So the grading criteria, if I can find it here, is, so the grading criteria is pretty straightforward. Note that there's 100 points possible in this particular example, but your breakdown here is the introduction of your text, making sure things are done here, and then the second source, author, and authority or title clearly introduced. So we know that you're working with these 2 texts, not a third text, and of course that text meets the core requirements. You're going to do some summary, paraphrase material used to capture ideas, quotes used sparingly and purposefully. There should not be large blocks or multiple sentences of quotes. Quotes should be done selectively because paraphrasing more than quotes show that you can understand, analyze, and interpret the ideas of a text, and that's more sophisticated. Plus, stylistically, paraphrased writing helps flow with the writing. And then the usual things that we had about that. Now, the trick on this one is that you're engaging these two sources. You're either comparing or contrasting ideas, you're affirming or rejecting, and if you watch the other video on answering ideas, it's kind of the agree or qualified agreement, disagreement, qualified disagreement ideas. And again, no additional research or text, just these two sources. That being said, there is room in this paper for you to enter into the paper with your own analysis and your own reasons. I say a few things about that on the Answering Ideas video. Note here that the responses follow a setup, remain focused on 1 or 2 points of engagement. They don't just go all over the place. Your paragraphs are organized and they're concentrating on some key ideas. And that those responses show you understand each source's perspectives. Attribution and citation is absolutely essential into this. Note that it's 30% of the grade in this paper. So use of attribution, after the last module, you should have a clear understanding what attributive tags are. Use of citations, those are those parenthetical citations that show where you found information. Remember, attribution and citations are used regardless of whether you use quotes or paraphrases. You treat them exactly the same. So whether you're quoting or paraphrase, you should have proper attribution that shows where sources came from and ideas, and then you should use proper citations that show that correspond to your works cited. The works cited entry included as well. And then this is familiar stuff with you, that how it's formatted and your use of particular problem areas. So now let's take a look at the assignment and a sample assignment and walk through this just a little bit. Okay, here's the sample summary response that's available to you. If you look on Canvas, you'll find one that's actually kind of marked up and annotated. I provide this annotation. You're welcome to go through it. Pretty much the whole thing's highlighted, so you can see some things that I thought were really well done in the sample and things that maybe need a little bit more work. So go ahead and take a look at that attribute or that kind of annotated version that you can find on Canvas. But what we're going to look here is one that's unmarked and just kind of take a look at the basic flow and some of the things that this particular sample does. Now, for the first thing it does is it introduces a key idea. And in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and use the article that we've already read in class, Utility and Ubiquity of Taboo Words by Timothy J. So it begins by introducing a particular general idea and then introduces that key text. And in this case, let's say this was my key text. Your key text will be different. This article is not optional as a key text. And then it talks about an idea, considers the way that some words have become taboo. This is a summary response, so right now I'm doing summarizing. I'm summarizing ideas from that article. Taboo words are not, Jay believes, universal and objective, they're not innately offensive. Rather, the words that become recognized as socially unacceptable are determined by shared social standards. So note here that this entire opening paragraph introduces kind of a general concept, gives me a sense of what the topic of the paper is going to be, gets directly to the key text, and then summarizes the key text and its ideas. What's important here, though, is that that key text is being responded to by another text. In this particular case, selected an article by Barbara Kay and Barry Sapolsky, and that information, the specific information of the title of the article, is at the end in the works cited. Note here, I selected, or the sample here selected a particular idea from the Jay article. Jay's view that people, quote, learn about taboos through socialization of speech practices is not unique. Note that that's a transition where it summarizes one of the key ideas from that key text and then prepares it for something to follow in that. Is not unique suggests that maybe there's another person who agrees or is interested in this. Then it introduces the second text. So this, and then of course this one uses really great introduction of the source material. So instead of stating the title, it tells us something about the two authors, that Kay is the associate professor in School of Journalism, and that Sapolsky is a professor of communication, etc. at Florida State. And then are also concerned about the relationship. So I've tied these two authors together, and then I make this other transition, that they're kind of being contrasted in a way. However, their focus is not on the origin or morality of these words. Instead, Kay and Sapolsky are concerned with how these words are used on television and whether these words might have harmful effects. So note here that the two articles are not being written about the exact same topic, but I found a place, or this author found a place that they could connect those two together. If you can do this, if you can do what was done here in these first two paragraphs, you have all the fundamental tools that you're going to need not only to succeed in this paper, but succeed in the exploratory synthesis. This is the heart of that. Note again, proper citation. Citation varies. This actually probably is unnecessary. So it might, in the citation, it might have noted that. So citation, that's applied to both quotes and paraphrases. Proper attribution. Note that the paper begins to move transitionally. This is a very sophisticated sample. As it concludes one idea, despite their differences in questioning the origins of taboo words, all the authors are concerned with it moves to a different perspective. So the paragraphs are focused examinations of an idea, and then as the paragraph ends, it might wrap up what that paragraph was about and introduce the next idea. In this particular case, it's a fairly straightforward paper, 4 total paragraphs, so it's really focusing on 2 key ideas, 1 idea, 2 ideas, and then coming back to the end. And in this conclusion, the author decided to add his, I think this was his own idea on the perspective. And that's perfectly acceptable. It doesn't even have to wait to the end. It can happen within the paragraphs themselves. So it kind of sums up the main ideas. As such, their article offers a more applied and practical consideration of taboo words and how they might actually impact certain social groups. Note that this is an evaluation, something that you weren't permitted to do on the summary assignment. This is stating one person has a better perspective than the other. You're welcome to do that as long as you explain your reasoning for introducing your perspective. Again, not opinions, perspectives. These are views that are explained and reasonable. And then the wrap up here. So this is a really well done example, and I hope you take some time looking at how sophisticated it is. The work cited is not as properly done, but there are some marks up on that sample paper, and you can see what's done with it. But it does have the basic ideas. The work cited should in this particular assignment contain 2 and only 2 sources, and they should meet the requirements that are assigned on the assignment sheet. So note here that the first article, the key text, Timothy J., and the second one was a second text chosen that fit along with this. And that's what the summary response is doing. So take some time to read through the sample and the assignment sheet. Visit the Writing Center as you can. Send me questions. But make sure that as you approach the summary response, you don't try to rush it because your ideas will be sloppy. You'll go back and forth. And that you spend enough time organizing your ideas that it's very easy for a reader to follow what 1 or 2 concepts you're choosing from your key text that you're then responding to with a second text. I hope this helps. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.